the Princeton University the laboratory 영화 고급 중대
First of all, I want to thank Princeton University for giving me this excellent opportunity to visit and experience this great place of learning.
예동 예롤이야 토마 아니 아메리카 레브레디 뉴스한다 아메리카리아 용바 틴타보레라 엔 야하기 치료다 예금 또 틴타볼 쳐야래 갑디 뉴스안에 둔자 진지 규주마도 중요하만해 다이미네 양결 가져야지 계급 안들이야 로야기 되버시라 총물에 세상 마주기 아니 베즈 마부체브레 되네야 제반의 시지기 좀제 개태요 말다 이미네야 아니 다다바도 안더팅 숨 마도다 네 용토요 말았어
I first visited this country in the year 2008, which was also the first time I left India since settling there. And I was only able to be in this country for 2 weeks on that first visit. The first visit gave me a very strong desire to come back, which I tried to do. It was initially unsuccessful. So this is only my third visit to the United States of America.
안다리 디 요한다 암비세르 제제 안 라브시모트 줄리아도 드라르시 오마네지 아리기 루트다 토레시아 고급데다 야라 티마브르 총브레 드레인주사네 아리 라브시모트 줄 신신 오여서 소소기 루트게다 초와 간디지면데 냠스 용하기 고급 용하지다 다나신기 소소기 안에 가서 고도 야체를 당하는 드리직 체르다 라브시모리아 드라게 레림지 쇠제 또 담보 라브시모 이래지 마도요 말해 대야 마체 다지 나랑 럽종 챙기지 임베 남바 체진 드라 마더베 녜마 렉처셔야다 다나신 진 가서다 돌린샤로 되게 제림게 요 말해 다 이미네 딘 제림데 엔 걸걸지 야체로 치지다 가서 this gasher change that kanda ta de sha sha
My particular reason for this visit to the United States is a desire that I have had for some time to see the great universities of this country. And this desire was born in me from my encounters with American university students in India, which gave me a strong wish to at least gain a glimpse of their experience studying in the great universities of this country. And hopefully, by gaining that glimpse, to be able to widen my own outlook. So my intention really was to come here as a student, not as a lecturer. But the plans kind of increased beyond that.
And the university truths in drama lecture in it decision labda chimre lecture share to chesha kadri indusada kandi ngarangi shang gotsumendo.
Because I'm visiting 6 great universities, I have now been called upon to give 6 lectures, one at each, which I don't know what to say about that.
아주 내 망부지에 labde nanoli nyenta ching labde dinanoli ya yebe shuche lubju 망부지 안 상월로 해야지 가수래지 enthusiasm 서버 좋아를 지게지 수수기 마음에 미지 나로리아 지 자활랍신 주야선한 장도 다는 신기 지적 체도修상부지 주투야기 참에 좋아당 다는 신기人民全部也得吧 안보여래 인두산에 아는 뭐지 다나 셔베 아주 로주 가실 토제 계속 총물에 재산 고주기 에네 학삼당 고주기 다 전환되게 나란리아 심규 대버선하다 심리아 전환 겸부 시라진 소수야.
The students of this university that I have met exhibit tremendous enthusiasm, tremendous commitment to learning. They have tremendous aspirations, and I feel very confident that they will do great things, and they will serve this world of ours. This morning I met with several students, and seeing their energy, their courage, their passion, their benevolent concern for the future of this world was inspiring to me.
This world somewhere, jidiendi conflict somewhere, nyogde khane yare, tangyom maimbe, khane yobe indusane. Mazugi artificial knowledge is because university labshime narole janshavek energy kachidegi sanandrado artificial knowledge jibugi ane sosu maobe mizi narole ya sosu sambadan shinjigi chawalabjin duyajilia ti jibugi lakaya sanandrado ti jibugi chobachi kala hauship chade yare demayo mangasolia dendengi semlia ji kashwe seba segom gnibo goyare shiro gnibo goyare kuyang gi samba goyare dana shingi ninjigi kashwe ninjigi zindra bujida kandar zi tambu dus goyare.
However, given that this world is so filled with conflict, external knowledge, the knowledge that we gain through study, which is by necessity is directed somewhat outwardly, the world around us, rather than at ourselves, may not be enough to enable us to accomplish the great things to which we all aspire. In addition to that knowledge, we need patience. We need relaxation of mind. We need openness. And we need a compassion that motivates everything we do.
Penangadru chashawimna ani tangbu kesa di chikashwe longba kugyo dana shingi mizaine jorba chunshuru trediliya kebre education labde nanjo tredchesaru education dilege kogabge chungya mare tadene lo dunya lebe kablia chadi da dana shingi rewa 자와네 매지기 토네 다 간다 까마부 문지 쳬브레 이나 나랑 게라 쳬브이나 까마부 문지 쳬브티기 다 민지 토바 잠레 마도 텔레신 다 가암베 가쇼마 다 강갈로 수수 신이 지 가좀 강에게 배주가 제거하지 니주지 마도베 에네 텔레데는 다 가쇼지 다 미망부지 삼년 나로 까마부 차바 점시기 버지 다 창물로 내리는 창물로 다 취했으면 그렇지 딜레지 삼던 거 딜레제요 내주산에 로춘춘이 아니 강에 망부지 냐브제 미진나로리아 준도 챌린지 망부 충분해
If I may use myself as an example, I was born in an isolated place in an undeveloped region. And there being no schools, I had no opportunity initially for any kind of formal education. But then when I was 7 years of age, without any preparation or warning, certainly without any wish on my part, I was recognized as the Karmapa. For me, it was just being given a name, but also being handed a burden, a source of trouble and endless challenges. It wasn't, as some people think, the instant resolution of all problems for me. It was a source of challenges. So from childhood, I've faced many, many challenges.
So that some normal people this week 가르쳐의 얘기 강해로부터 간제에 냠수 용주 샤네 얘는 imagination 샤들래 강해로 정리도 가르쳐야 되지 아다들이 인두산 디균제다 유에서 제장 다 니제가 도안에 제인두산 다 드린디 아니 조진 딘디지기 강에 망부지 균이 총비 인두산에 에너지 아주 지가스에 참sam지 spiritual religious leaders 두산 배 고스지 기보지 소화 기부를 지다 luxury로 지 딘디지 나로리아야 살론 총대바 로지 딘디 많이 봐 다녀디 간다 지 신다지 나로 살론 총브레 거두지 나로 살론 총브레 딘디지 거두 나로 살론 총브텔 댄체 아니 미신다가 강에 이내야 다 가수에지 강에 털에 삼로 동안 들레디스 수수지 가수에 삼로 동안 망아듯이 소소를 강에 총비 인자 아니 미신다기 강에 털에 인비는 삼로 동안 그 가수지 마르심으로지다 다나신 딜이야 지 심구르 천왕 철조예지 대인주산에 다 드린 게 시야가 죄셔변아 gender issues 아르당 다 디지털이 미네야 된den게 수수익 미진앙기 천왕의 제외 토안에 엔텔리아 수수익의 가수에 심구르를 전부 용도
It may be difficult for normal people to imagine the challenges that someone like me has to face, but let me assure you there are challenges. I suppose some people imagine that being a spiritual leader, one leads a life of comfort, luxury, and ease. Let me assure you that is not the case. It's filled with challenges and difficulties of all kinds. But the difficulties that I've had to face have increased my empathy, because by experiencing so many challenges, it's enabled me to develop more and more concern for the difficulties that other beings, other people face. And so it's for that reason really that I have become so sensitive to and concerned with issues such as the gender issues and the other issues that you've asked me to address today.
Gender issue to share with me, and Tagi Modena Becablia, Jison, Carcer de Pelia, Carcer Pumelia, and the full ordination, Cha Tiqualia, G. Carcer, Modena Becablia, Jison. Chitang Gita, Carcer Peggy Pumelia, the full ordination with the Jimadi, and Peggy Pumet Pumetsolia, G. Carcer. 최소기 딱 가지고 돈받지고 뭐임바 나 되게 분명히 에너지 최소 나눠려 하는 분명히 가지고지 톱다운다 안 뉴바당 다나싱 리더십 다들이지 청구하래 되게 다나싱기 에너지조 나눠려야 되게 딱 안들 슈게 전부 즉 가지고 연구해봐대 아주 청구해버려. Today we can send ten and a constant with some shot. Ke energy carre, Titolia, Miseg to Shebre, and Tanaji Peggy, the cable Mabuchigi, long, Nijusum Julia, to the Mangustanze, Titolia, energy carre solution, Sujibja, somewhere that G, Tinaji, Bezu, Gunjin Shebre. And the Indusane, Neg to the Titolia, this Carsuaji. She should do that young and Conan to inspire some way. Conan to Chale Namatel Dance, Arandia, Sim Carsway, Gumatev Jeda, Tana Singi, and Conan to Gitaji Tilek, Chashi and the Jim Batilia, around to show you.
In Dean Bowden's introduction today, she mentioned that I am involved with the reestablishment of full monastic ordination for women in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. In fact, the issue of the reestablishment of full ordination for women in this tradition is not simply an issue of dharma, of religion or spirituality, nor is it only an issue of the reestablishment of the giving of vows of a certain type. It goes to the very heart of the need to protect and promote the rights of women, their empowerment, and to support their innate capacity for leadership. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has for many years demonstrated a particular concern that we find a good resolution to this issue, and assisted by many scholars has searched for a solution. My service in this regard has been to inspire, I hope, people to support this and to facilitate in whatever way I can the activity of the reestablishment of this full ordination.
Women's empowers and Tana Shabang Azu Kiz Chombare. But it's number some Katawan Daji women's empower Sadi Shetwa Kawados. Pentataric Shavina, full education, ye make tone. Energy Pumelia Kashwaji Pumela empowering you made full ordination, you made our tongue. Yana Prangazuji, Jizo Nalolia Benergy Pumegita, the short look to short to Casa, the short law look, Chominda, Tana Singi, and Pumegi, President, somewhere that is a long Chomila, so that they call as a Shigare. Inati, the day ever some Shigi, and Pumeliaji, 되게 full somewhere. Top down 차상 top down 선한다도 다 empowering somewhere. 다 되지 차상지 톱에 예버스게 매외속지. 드레인두상 아주기 measurement somewhere 천지야디 되게 치 넘버 좀 남배 좀 다 되지 누민두. 되지 보면 되지 top down 쉐위나 energy empowering 예배다. 되지 매배이나 empowering 매버듯이 되지 천지야디 안타지도 지 가수 세다 되버지미 안티좀 자리요.
Many people speak about the empowerment of women, and as several of us discussed in a dialogue we had this morning, it's important to remember that the restoration of women's rights and the full empowerment of women must go far beyond mere external appearances and institutionalized mechanisms or structures. Such necessary steps as restoring the full monastic ordination for women in my own tradition, famous historical steps such as women's suffrage, even the election of a woman as president, these steps are in themselves not enough to really restore women's rights, to really empower women. And we cannot assess the degree to which women are empowered in our society, the degree to which they possess the rights that are their rights, by such externals alone.
Understanding some of the Pinsu Jigilia, Tuan Tambadang, Ning Taba, German may be Zikashreji, Pinsu Jigilia, Zawadang, Kukurchadang, Tana Singi, the Laxam Sweme summary. The Digiquadi, the Ketchumship Chadi Ada. Shemadabe, Lumba Mambuchinanola, Giga Mambuchinanolia. 지 보면이 톱다운다 이제 empowering 사이드죠. 마치 팀룩이 토안에 지 가주에 순급체 대부 잠식이다. 야나지 public 서머베지 만족이 무슨 잠 서머베 다지 딘데가 토안에 지 가주에 닌 타고네 델리아 지 가주에 샘솔 매합체 이미냐 따지 넘주르 잠시다 다나 신들이 토네 제리아시 근데 이미 인상 아주기 예급 가시지 나올래야 파대비 이미냐 남발래야 다지 가수에 톱단도 차상 예비네야 단동 안 보면에 태심 강에 무균 태대야지다 아니지 용시베 동에데 무균이 용대야지 또 용기여때 가다선 조던 아주지 지기질이야 된 담밤 지 인타번에 편주지기들이야 그고르당 자와 사무지 주모도 발 때는 용면으로 섬들을 정도.
We need a mutual understanding, and this understanding has to be real. It can't be fake or contrived. It has to be loving, it has to be respectful, and it has to be founded in basic human benevolence and caring for one another. Many countries have used legislation to protect the rights of women or social pressure to promote them. And if you look at such societies briefly, it might seem that there is gender equality in them. But if you look very, very closely, there is still not gender equality. In spite of legislation, in spite of social pressure and political correctness, women still suffer inequality. So I think the solution to this is that we go beyond mere legislation and social pressure and try to really develop a love really develop understanding and real, authentic concern for one another.
다 딜라야 테레데네 아는 가수지 가수레지 라렌 단계에서 말해 배나 다기 건드시는 시에 아주 별이야 게롬 오르네션 지하고리야 계제 로니시 수시야버서 동아 야갈 마용 권에 계제디 고주사입니다. 드레인주스탄 로니시 수시 계시야브레 다디 오늘은 계시시야브디 라렌 단계로지 참참 계시지시에 디제지시에는 계제 두기면지 자연고래 드레인주스탄에 다디 무슨 라렌 단계지고 하디 쉽지 계체 계제 간데시에는 타마들이야 무슨 좀 돼야지 이내 무슨 드레인주 대체할량 아주 액티비스트 서머르 라렌 단계 제드니지 고가래
About activism, to use this restoration of the full monastic ordination for women as an example, talk of restoring it began among Tibetans in the exiled community probably 20 or even 30 years ago, certainly before I reached India. And that talk has continued throughout these 20 or 30 years. One person after another has had things to say about it. But in spite of all of this conversation, we have not so far put it into practice. We have not applied it. And I think that in this regard, activism would consist of actually doing it, actually restoring it, instead of just talking about restoring it.
Activism sadly yes on number ni some tangdo. Chitan chevinang azu sanglo living in sort of karsueta interdependent world. The name means and it's sangologic activist chadiach. Same jigilia shugen take yevchidang. Su karachevine, Kasa Sujigi. 자와 컨텐츠 제외나 디지털이야 슈겐 태기였지. 인두산나 다 디토네 다 액티비스트 라운드 만집스 게임이었지. 이나 액티비스트 뭐마티 딘디지기 슈겐 태바자 마임바. 다 간사지기 체동 안에 간다 체동 안에 consciously somewhere 체동 안에 차와지리야 슈버지 다 고가래 미유지 샤치 인텔리아 미유든 주가 체도 안에 차와지리아 슈버지도 고가래
I suppose there are two types of activists. Given that we all live in this interdependent world and that therefore our every action affects everyone and everything else, we are all automatically activists, whether we know it or not. But there is a second type of activist, which is what I would call a true activist, and that is someone who is not simply an automatic activist, but an intentional activist. That is someone with a vision who seeks to achieve a specific goal or end.
아주 진짜 액티비스트 니가 삼동과데 개좀 쉽차디야래. 배는 아주 지조 나는래 배는 젠더 이슈를 지면 지조 난가 따당. 지조 난가 미기 따당다. 지조 난가 미 삼동당이야. 지 가수의 라시불이에브래. 드리 디균즈데네 아주 미리기 삼동당다. 안다는 신기 구조 개당 토네. 에너지 배나 젠더 이슈냐래, environment 이슈냐래. 상월로리아 아니 가주에 디기 슈겐 태게 여비제당 딜랑 아주 상월로는 겐 여비지 아주 셰과디 시비지 개좀 차대 여러 something도
I think we need to be both kinds of activists, the automatic activist and the intentional activist. To apply this to the issues of gender, we need to pay attention to changing society. We need to pay attention to the views of our society at large and the behavior and customs of our society at large. But we also need to take responsibility for our own views and behavior as individuals. This is also true in our stewardship of the environment. We need to take on, or at least share in, our own individual responsibility as a member of the aggregate that makes up our society in stewardship of the environment as in other issues as well.
United Hindustan, the Mikashechilia, that the Hindustan, Sosulia, Tindegi, Chawala Shuni, Gain Kuriagi, Samba Yuna Menea, Tendam, Mazuchigile, Javachi of Hindustan, Jigilia, Shugan Tegayavati, Mazushi of Chawati, Ketchup Chadi. That is social and gain, Yaya, Maya, that one Javati on the yard. That didn't nibati Karasana, Nazun gain Kurne. Mazu Kulonji Kurne, Miyuji Sone, Yagashati, that exhibits Mamarudi, the Chagare. That dig exhibits the Yakog Ketchishudi, Kulon the Ketchuchi. So say, Miyu the Kulondi, Savage Yokaji down. Energy Kashwe number Tower Yokoati.
Although some people may not intentionally or actively undertake responsibility, we all, whether we believe it or not, share in our common responsibility for preservation of the environment, for issues of social justice, and so on. The other type of activist, the true or intentional activist, is someone who consciously undertakes responsibility, who takes upon themselves a greater responsibility than they would otherwise have by necessity. And in such cases, when we become intentional or true activists, the most important thing is our motivation, our true aim. It's important that our goal or aim be very clear and that our motivation be very pure.
Yeah, social activists, Mambo Tonyo, Manche the days Chicago. Very angry, somebody. Manche the day, angry things yard. Karasana, angry chadi, Kuzu Miyuji soon, or Kuzu, the Kange Manguski. Ina Guaka Tongan, Jizon and Gua, to Mavaton to San, T. Semnich, that Tungas and Drab, some emotional charge in Midusana, social actives, Mambuji, the Mambujilia, the assembly Gangas, Taji Kozulia, and a cause Tambug Miyugi, Gulon, Zangmadi, Kaligali, Jizoki, G. Nizulia, Denche. Gulondi energy, not one to charge. And that social energy can get charged. The Legionadi or Casure Rodanopsi.
I've met many social justice activists, and the majority of them are angry. I think the reason that we become angry, often as activists, is frustration. We set ourselves a goal, a change we wish to effect, and when we don't observe a change, when we don't observe success in what we seek to do, it begins to affect us emotionally, at which point our goal has been, in a way, muddied by our frustration.
Aspirations of social justice, aspiration down, because me did the lonely division. That day, when the Genedi, Casre, Deliaji, remendi shukshimbu juajiliya community tadar doshukwadi da gejum chadiyare jesa rangda ji myolam tyumpasa nan rangdo rangda aspiration jigwe indeba tizo da nyamde cheche teni jiga thwane kandar nga zogi ene susu aspiration di lonely indeba jidang andana sing di ji nyumchung indeba ji nyume indeba ji machabu cheche tadi nyuba de kontrol to aliya nga zogi da kandar di community doshukwa jidang manzo doshukwa di gejum ji chadiyare susu myolam di kansa shingi myolam dan jeba suiche dindega thwane karishwadaji come together ruchegwadi gejabis.
Our aspiration for social justice can never be a lonely one. It must be one that is cultivated in community. Great aspirations require community. They require the fellowship, the company, the support of other people who share the same goals and have the same concerns and motivations. By embracing community and fellowship in our aspirations, we will no longer feel ineffective or powerless. Being connected with others, coming together with others in this way seems to be important or even essential for the protection and growth of our aspirations.
Penang under chasam dak kanda spiritual leadership nizu khashe nye chende me marade ine ngara ji shenyen roji rawa jamnyen roji kuma chinyen roji 고야래 남경 아주 지 시야 줘래 배나 지 상계기 마 최셰두사네 상계 최셰 마셰바다 최 현대 매바 말하되 얘네 다지기 미지기 지 최지 셰로지 지 꾸마 쉬고야지 다 되게 되게죠 되는 시체죠 간다라 되는 주사네 나를 이미네 미망부치기 배나 gender issue네 다나 신기 티 나로네 배나 지 결혼의 이슈로 디수 토리미네 미지기 말에 꾸만 신이야다 다나 신알이야 다지 가르에 디스 센디브 신이야로부터 가시 중소 될 때인제 아니 소수면에서 지 제고도와 성상으로 지라 되는 지 수수기 가르에다 가르쳐야 이부터 하고지 지유진도 성상으로지 되는 니바 통고를 인도스탄에 대균선대네 아주 미신달이야 된데 미망부질이야 전대 매바다 야나 체 미시브 말데 있는 디술이야 꾸마다 디술이야 안에 가셔야 된데기 센티비체니지 고이스라.
For example, in my case, as a spiritual leader, there are some things, some responsibilities that I have to be encouraged, even exhorted to undertake. It's not that I don't wish to share these burdens, but it won't happen until someone asks. Traditionally, we say that the Buddha, after his awakening, did not teach until someone asked him to. It wasn't that he didn't want to teach, it's just someone has to ask. In the same way, my interest in gender issues, in the particular issue of the reestablishment of the bhikshuni, or full monastic ordination for women, and these things have been brought about through the encouragement, even exhortation, of several people. When people demonstrate a concern for a certain issue, I naturally think, I must do something about this. I must get involved. And their encouragement literally gives me the courage to do it. Well, in that way, we all need the encouragement and support of others who share our vision.
Dini Rusana Jizo Nagi Pena Mina Keshenda, Jizo Guti di Solia, Natsuki Rawatunguati, Gachimishrachi. Natsu Rawach Tembi, Rawach Tembi Mina, and Rawatunguati, Gachimishi, but Sonaro to Chosons.
And I think that in the same way, we need to encourage and even exhort or appeal to leaders of societies in order to cause them to act as well.
I think time for question.
So now we're going to move to the questions that have been chosen or submitted, which I dropped on the floor. So I'll read the question in English, then translate it to His Holiness. If necessary, he actually speaks English. He just pretends not to, so I have something to do. The first question is, there seem to be lots of different motivations for activism. Activism motivated by anger, by guilt, or by compassion, for example. I think activism motivated by compassion is ideal, but I've noticed it is often much quieter, more private, and sometimes does not have as big a reach. Activists motivated by guilt or anger seem to work very publicly for change. What do you think about affecting structural change through these different kinds of activism? The activism.
Misegi. Tadi chilling is Yamnor Shavin and get a issue in a singing. Activists lay Kulon, the Kashmir Chadiaj. Kashe, Jig digs the Jigger. The anger of the young guilty that and Rabban Mangusio, the Shavanashi, the Tuatina Mangushet water. Matsu get the me you do the Kashway. Me Druiade, me did a Drugual, me the Druid Chevalier, and the Jig Kashway Daji. Me the Drukumavina, Susugi and the Jig Chade, Sambo in Bajitang, and the Yakoji in Baji. Tichibugi, Nagé the Crucishimina, and a Tendar Druade Kalahosh Chadi or something. The Ninjas and Ketchishudi. And Mazugi and Chawad and Drubialia, Pendoha, Chijon Dan, Benedis G. Kaswe, Shiwadam, G. Private Guyananda, Aman days G. Kaswe, this Zubundovijan, G. Public Kaswe more sort of demonstration of the Guyananda. That is Nedan Tan, Charmatongi, Yodugisha, the Kalahostando. Yimbineam, Samsung Mazuni cartoon or Sana. Then Benedict Samsung Nuchoda, Sharcho Begi, Barulia, Gange Teddy or Nuchoba Kashegi, and the Sharcho Benedict Carwe, gender issue of the Nico Geshed and Nazu Yahweh, Chizu Tujare Shasar, Lijigi, Kandar Kuzuki Yanachi, Saja Dilia, Benesaja. Kakemojili, Janzo, Yapuchimindus, Arbishi, and Dusane, that dig Samsung create more conflict. Chadi Arabchidang, that they on their Jim water. And they do some deacons and Dene, and Samsung Azuki activities this more sort of soft, more Kashwadaji space. Musical, they catch him to Chadi. Dandona, under Kashwaji. Me Drubialia Kachim Chamadobe so emotional summer Susugi some sort tiki, Shiviji, Kashwe, some Tsona Gimbal Cheji, some sort of chair chan. Did the Chavina, not like how Shivji, some tangles. 이 situation 딜이야 도나시나면 선수를 숙제잖아. 안 돼서 강의 길어서.
As I said a few minutes ago, for any activism, a motivation is of the greatest importance. As mentioned in this question, in activism we could be motivated by all kinds of things, such as anger and guilt and all sorts of things. But in activism, we are trying to accomplish a goal, a specific goal, and that is what we need to do. We will not be able, however, to accomplish our goal as activists if we approach our activism or approach the accomplishment of our goal with the arrogance or pride of thinking that we are somehow better than others, that we are good or better. As far as the demeanor with which we conduct our activism, it depends upon the specific issue in which we are involved or with which we are concerned. Sometimes a quiet, even private approach may be effective because of its softness. At other times, it may be better to be more loud, even raucous, and very public. But sometimes we are loud and raucous when a softer approach would be more effective. For example, returning to gender issues, sometimes Westerners will point to Asian or other Eastern cultures and say, we have gender equality, you don't. Our society is therefore more advanced, more developed, more evolved than yours. Our way of doing things is better than yours. You should drop your way of doing things and do it our way. Well, for obvious reasons, that kind of approach sometimes can simply create more conflict, more resistance. In such situations, being soft, being spacious in our activism will be more effective. In addition, we need to remember that the purpose of being an activist is not to be concerned with our own feelings, our own emotional involvement. The purpose in being an activist is to get something done, to bring a resolution of whatever issue we are concerned with or involved in. And I say this because sometimes, because we can become so emotionally involved in our particular cause or issue, we start to pay too much attention to our own emotional state and too little attention to the actual issue or situation that we are supposed to be dealing with to start with. The second question, it seems that there are many people who understand environmental issues, such as climate change, and why they are important, but don't do very much to change their behavior. Why is this, and how can we best encourage such people to change?
That is smoking consumption summer bedaji. Tamatiarva. Smoke. Smoke tilia kumdi. Did double chadi smoke tamatia deliaji tama ji dinsa tama ginalo kase silia tamatem jobi public area tamatem job rules danasin tama gumjung not only any around the smoke is killers but that tea and is bad jar than damage tea already in a tea as a pinga 단동이네 가수라지 the smoke the issue modern road aji sometimes this chapter no channel kama di ninga sabare seria di chapter sorchi kenzaru channel tena shi chen information 당 지가주에 지 대시 잡점식 아주 팽면도 다 조된 아주리 motivation 과디 자외 시제기 아주 motivation 체시하디 오늘전에지 레베 나롤이야 지 구육이 거기 계시야부터 가져대 삼 니주 고도여부터 마세비 닝기기네 소소를 천하래 붙여야지 개점심 차대 예술 삼정도 motivation이 교담바 이미나 아니 아주 군주는 교원도 그래 군주는 교화침 이미나 아니 아주 여기 에너지 니마르지기 지 소화계단이야 교원도 그래 되는 교화침 이미나 아니 신에 된된 가수지 쿠율이야 교화당도 그래 삼정이 마다비 쿠육이 순교당 디도데 지 demonstration 샤당 지 니만 가셔지리야 very active 제야 디지뷰기 핑계와 많아 다디 니마르지 수수 좋아하는 자가 예브래 다디는 인지미지 맞을이야 디브 가져다지 이모션 가져다지 디 굴롱 띵습지 거야 돼 계집시 차대면서
It's a lot like smoking, for example. We've got to the point where there are very few places you can actually smoke. You can't smoke in public areas. And the information about how bad it is, how bad smoking is for your health, is readily available. There are warnings on every package of tobacco or tobacco products. There are even advertisements about how bad smoking is. And yet, it's not enough to stop everybody from smoking. Information, explanations are not enough. There needs to be a strong, deep, fundamental motivation to change our behavior. Simply knowing that we should, that it would be better for us or better for others, isn't enough. The knowledge we gain from information is stored in our brains, but it doesn't necessarily communicate itself to our hearts. We are only willing to change when we feel a strong motivation to do so deep in our hearts. Once we feel that motivation, then we will change our behavior. And if enough people change their behavior, we will succeed in preserving this environment. But in changing our behavior, simply doing something dramatic one day is not enough. It has to be a day after day, a constant effort and constant, based on a deep conviction that comes from being fundamentally motivated to change.
베나텔리아지 남배기 떠주부터는 낸지 겹슬라비미나 겹단지 유기를 nga gegenwene sumzu shesana shedanji yugire ina yang ta nga yang kama bi meji ku ye binza nge gegi sumzu tia rangi ngangi nambe tudu den jaba ye ru charo madabe kama bi sumzu ndire yana nambe tudu shedan dire sa karu chomaro ta ine kebas kemendo 남배들로 돈 쉐비는다 나랑 게스트 돈 쉐비는다 소디 가수에서는 based on true love somewhere 지금 오늘 세와 시샤버를 드리지 또 안에 임베체 지금 되샤다 세벌로서 어디 시샤 뒤쪽만 임베체 세와 시샤버를 쉐비는 지금 그래 세와 시샤로 메나 anything get the lesbian this get 지보만 다 지당 아주 common 서머를 되지 가르 포도모 딘디 자와이면 포메 파르 자와이미냐 다 대양 된데 지 되샤 조르 제미나 안데 야부스게 말아 봐 안데 인두스탄데 인두스탄디 균셀테네 아주 사모타한테 디리질 삼당 아랑 원에냐 디 삼당 여라 남배기 최응원에 지당 남배 최응원에 시합입니다. 안에지 가르에 kimba 포메 지 소화계당 대래 쉽지 남배 응원에 진디 지하고는 디 지하고 말해서 룰을 무시하랑 지 가르에 쇼치면 쉽지 미세 다주 돈바 예비네 니주 가래 셰마도 왜 디단 디사도 쉽지 요 말해 드린 비싼 디균세된 하들을 주셔야면 something.
Well, there might be a difference between a traditionalist Buddhist answer to this and my own personal answer, which of course brings up the issue that since I'm the Karmapa, my answer would become sort of a Buddhist answer. The way I think of it, however, is this. The issue here is true love. In any relationship, whether it is between two people of the same gender, two people of different genders, if the relationship is founded on, based on true and genuine love, and not just physical desire, then it's authentic. But if a relationship is based only on desire, only on gratification, and not on love, then whether it is a gay relationship, lesbian, or heterosexual relationship, it's still not going to be very good. So the issue here is love. And that is what makes a relationship authentic and valuable. In traditional Buddhism, of course, there are lots of rules governing the behavior of householders, which is to say non-monastics, lay people. And then, of course, if you're a monastic, then everything is off the board. How do we balance a need to be compassionate and gentle in our discussions of gender equality with our need to be heard and the immediacy of the problem? How do we engage in productive dialogue with people who do not necessarily want to listen?
Listen. Tadi samsamji 가르에지 아주 samsam different angle from sam당과도 계속 시비면서 something도 배나 그뒤에 소수시아바 번르지 버르고 년번 번르지 많이 버지 소수에 년번 번르지 버르 보시아바 번르지 제비나 간들으셔야 돼. 딱 간들 소수기 다당 아주 compassion 세야도 지버래. 가르에 그뒤에 비네 separation을 체제. 지 가르에다지 가르에 가사 니여버를 비네 상을 만담 체제. 간다주 소수 디 네버대함 디 과사들 예비체제. 근데 지금 상동과한테 개좀 쉽지 차되면 something도. 가야서는 아주 망고지 그뒤에 비네 초집에 상만 당바. 야나지 소수 그뒤에 시에 된게 지금이 생경기 의면에 상당마다 연계돼 상동과 말아. 배나 최생계 망고지기 연계는 깔래 가지고 하고 온다. 다 연계될 때지 때 소수니 아주 디강해야 다 삼상 아주 traditional 최시에도서 주주 숨시들의 시에샤 생계대 코란베 하르 레지게 시에디가래 근데 코란 강해를 다지 강해 매서 말어 다지 뒤순 교부 싶죠 다 마저들이 최년견에서 다 주주 숨시들도 다디 상으로 이거 좀 동안 다 고도 강해 같이 돼요 근데 다디 소수 최년견이 맞아봐도 디 강해 가리면디 하고 온다 이제 조그르비 시한도 원래 조그르비 가르쳐 오는데 총도 제거리야 미지 최시에버스 최시에도사네 안 다보 미망고예버자 미망고예버지 근데 그 최시에도사 미지르레 니르치 퇴원심버스 안 다마도 미질 하더라스 딱 그 취해서 상마시에서 내 콜이야 투지 취해서 그런 게 나래배 년바 투지 취해서 나라서 어디 미디기 콜이야 안게 교랑 게 계제니 냐가 쳐 데데 미스 나 교랑 게 제일 계제 생에디 근데 데 고데스 라라 다 된다 비슷해 봐 전화로도 들으시자 대인도 아주 앵글도 돼 집에 가고도 계속 보시면 좋습니다.
Sometimes we need to think of different angles, different ways to communicate with or appeal to people. We assume communication by our talking and the other person listening. But that's not always the most effective way to get through to someone or communicate. Our compassion has to go beyond the perception of ourself and the person with whom we're dealing, to whom we're speaking, to whom we're listening, as two different people. We need to be able to put ourselves in their place. We often think of things, including the issues that are dear to us, only from our own perspective as a talker. And that causes us to talk at rather than to people. For example, someone who is teaching a Dharma, a spiritual teacher, needs to keep in mind the growing fatigue of their listeners. In traditional teachings, sometimes you are supposed to go on for 3 or 4 hours teaching. And when you're the teacher, of course, you're exhilarated. You're enthused by your topic. And so the time passes very, very quickly. But without you being aware of it, you've gone way beyond the attention span of your intended listeners. Actually, it reminds me of a joke. Someone was giving a lecture, and at the beginning of the lecture, there were many, many people listening and attending. And one after one, they started leaving until by the end of his lecture, there was only one person sitting there. So he went up to the person sitting there and said, "Thank you for attending my lecture." And the person said, "Oh, I wasn't here to listen to you. I'm just waiting for the next lecturer." So sometimes we need to try different angles. The next one. I am a college student who now lives in New York City. Having spent many years of my youth in mountains, surrounded by dense forests and river valleys, I cultivated a very deep relationship with nature that I find difficult to be away from. Though New York can be seen as an extreme city space, how would you recommend a person not living in nature stay in touch with it?
다들 전화를 집어주시는 아라인에 이제 전화 정시 중뒤에 배 야채에다 간다를 런종 구요를 지난 전화 정보래. 제가 삼삼 narrow streets 말하면 종길 부수도 없는 레디스 괜찮아를 지 어디도 레인비스안에 땅에 다들 미세 가수에 아주 쿠류디 간다 다당 나랑 외에 쿠유리아 숨겹지하기 지 심쇼를 영화대 조 딘데가 삼버되는 정말에 인도상 아주 딘데기 아주 여기 쿠유 라이에벤 제바 사모주에버디 아주 쿠유 숨겹지하기 닝도당 뉴베질리아 유튜브입니다. 야외공면에 섬들을 정도스.
Well, I have the same experience. I was born and initially brought up in a pristine, entirely natural and very spacious environment. So when I'm in a city space where the streets are basically narrow canyons, I can feel them closing in on me a little bit. I think that we mitigate this sense of separation from the natural environment by becoming courageous in our efforts to preserve the environment as a whole. And I find that my involvement with environmental preservation has mitigated the sense of distance from the natural environment in which I was born.
다음에 요시한테
라.
다들 무슨 저기 단주.
Yes. We're going to stop here.
Thank you.